Hi, welcome back to the second round of the Mythic Championship qualifier live from Szczecin, Poland. So, we have seen the first round of the tournament. Hi, that's us. My name is Piotr Bomak.
And I'm Piotr Bogowski, also known as Canister.
In the first round, we saw the matchup of Blue-Red Drakes and Saltime Midrange. And Saltime Midrange pilot was Paprykarz, and he's here in round 2 to continue his hot streak of one win, and he's going up against a powerful wizard.
Jędrzej Schmidt from Poznań. Who is a friend of mine. We live in the same city and we play the game of Magic the Gathering frequently, I would say.
Yesterday we saw Jędrzej playing the Esper control deck. Any changes today?
Well, today he's going to be piloting the mono-blue aggressive deck.
So at least no Teferis.
There's nothing wrong with the Teferi sprinkled in from time to time, but
not for 7 hours straight.
yeah. So notably, Piet is playing a version of Sultai that is keeping on Wildgrowth Walkers, as we have mentioned during the last round. Wildgrowth Walker is one of the cards that's kind of potent against the mono-blue strategy, allowing you to punish the mono-blue deck for not keeping up your any counter spells for your Trail Adventures or stuff like that. And like then you just grow your board too much and you gain too many life points and it's too hard to race you. So in absence of Wildgrowth Walkers, it's going to be, it was not very great matchup game 1 for the Sultai deck anyway, so in the absence of Wildgrowth Walker, I think it's going to favor Jędrzej deck-wise, possibly. Although play draw is definitely relevant.
And he lost the die roll this time.
And by he you mean...
Jędrzej.
Yes. Jędrzej lost the die roll, so Piet is going to be on the play, looking for that powerful turn 1 Llanowar Elf opening hand, because that's how you try to win the matchup, partially.
Power through those early plays.
Yeah, like the way to beat mono blue is to double spell as early as you can start double spelling. So Llanowar Elf certainly helps with that. You can double spell earlier in the game, so that's definitely what you are looking for, especially on the play.
And Jędrzej was not happy with his 7. He's going to mulligan to 6 cards.
Potentially looking for those Curious Obsessions, or maybe just a functional hand.
Perhaps.
Like you probably don't really mulligan towards an obsession. Like you don't hard mulligan in Magic towards the card. It's not really feasible to do that, with the exception of, I guess, Dredge in Vintage with Bazaro back that. He decides to keep his one lander hand because he has both an island. I see a Curious Obsession. I did not see any monsters.
However, he kept a card on top, so might indicate some plays.
There's an opt on Obsession.
Chart a course.
He's shuffling his cards very, very widely. Brian Kibler style. So I cannot really see he's using opt to try to hit his second land drop and then deploy a threat of some kind. And fortunately for him, he found one. There's a Merfolk Trickster in his hand, so he can flash in the Trickster on turn 2 to tap the Llanowar Elves. Pete has a Thought Erasure.
So now we're going to see exactly the contents of Jędrzej's hand.
And Jędrzej's hand has the most powerful card in the deck in Curious Obsession, but it's actually kinda resilient towards discard spells. If Pete takes Curious Obsession, which I kinda imagine he will, since otherwise there is this creature protected with double dive down with obsession onto it, which you really don't want to face if your hand is kind of expensive and land light, which is the case for Pete. So yeah, he takes the Curious Obsession, but Jędrzej can just attack with the Trickster, draw 2 cards with Paprykarz, possibly make 2 more land drops and then play a Djinn protected by Dive Down. This is a pretty potent move.
The first blood of the game, drawn by Jędrzej.
He just passes and opts to keep his counterspell up instead, and is rewarded for that. Pete missed his 5th land drop. Actually, he did not, but he decided to play a Jadelight Ranger instead of that to not get hit by a Spell Pierce.
Isn't that the counterspell played by Jędrzej was
Essence Capture.
Yes. So that's counter target creature spell. Put a counter on up to 1 target creature.
Jędrzej choosing not to deploy 1 drop, valuing his dive downs enough. Like because he has 2, he wants to use one of those up ASAP in a way. Also makes it look as if he could have a Spell Pierce, and Pete definitely respects Spell Pierce, it seems. Decides to play the Jadelight Ranger. Jadelight also notably blocks the Trickster, so he probably is not really too keen on keeping the second Vivian Reed in his hand, and is happy with a Breeding Pool draw. So overall Pete develops well, and Jędrzej might have trouble closing this game. Hasn't drawn his 4th land to deploy the protected Djinn, and it seems like Jędrzej is not really into deploying a non-protected one.
Offers the trade with the Jadelight Ranger.
Potentially using Dive Down to protect it if Pete blocks.
And he did.
Exactly that happened. So use the first one as a combat trick. Now gives Pete the opportunity to untap again. Pete can just jam a huge Hydrate Crashes though. That's one of the possible opportunities for Pete, since like again he doesn't want to Vivian Reed exactly right now, because Vivian gets Spell Pierced pretty hard, and there are cards in Jędrzej's hand that are not known to Pete, even though that Spot Erasure was cast on turn 3 or 4. It's probably deploying a huge Hydrate Crisis is going to be the preferable way to go about things if Jędrzej only represents 1 mana.
There it is, a crosses with 5 counters.
Yeah, pay 5/5, draw 2 cards, gain 2 life points. Decided to lose 2 life with the land because
he's gaining it back anyway, so
yeah, just values the 5th counter on the crosses enough. The 5th counter is irrelevant against Djinn plus Obsession sometimes, so yeah, right now it's going to be slightly tougher for Jędrzej, since there is a huge blocker on the battlefield that can just throw a wrench into his plans. Probably going to trade with a Djinn. And Pete has a lot of lands.
Also a Chupacabra.
Yeah, probably going to play Chupacabra, trying to start grinding through the removal spells available to Jędrzej. Yep, protecting the Djinn with the Siren, and then just spending his cast down, murdering the Djinn. Now Jędrzej has no threats, and it is for Pete to decide whether to play an untapped Shockland to deploy a
Branchwalker.
Branchwalker.
And he does.
Decides it's worthy enough.
Yeah, he's just going to place as much pressure on the board as possible right now.
I think it's extremely reasonable. Again, that's the 3rd Vivian. So probably is going to try to draw a more relevant card than that. Nope, he thinks it's good enough. That's also reasonable. So given that Merfolk Branchwalker is a 3-2, he can also freely attack with the 5 power crosses right now. 5 damage is no slouch. Injury drew an island, so unfortunately this mono blue deck again not too good at coming back from behind, and he didn't get the appropriate amount of pressure early in the game, spending his first turns cantripping instead of his turn 1 and cantripping instead of playing a 1 power flyer to pressure Pete. So now Pete can just play, you know, all Pete can do is really play Vivian Reed, and we'll see him decide whether he wants to plus or minus. He knows about the last dive down from the Photo Erasure. It's going to make Yenjay spend it. Makes Yenjay unable to use the Pteromander dive down as a combat trick. Yenjay is not even engaging the Pteromander in combat, not even adapting it. How many spells does he have in his graveyard? I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that would mean that the adaptability costs 3 just now.
I'm not entirely sure. I see dive down, Charge Horse, Essence Capture, dive down, and opt. I think those were cards cast.
There's a Contempt on top of the library revealed by the Branchwalker.
Yeah. Engaging in a top deck situation with a Sultai deck is also kind of a bummer, because they do play all of those explore creatures, and you know, it's not actually very relevant, but it shows you that the card is coming next turn, so you're like, oh wow, okay, he's going to draw this, then that's going to be kind of hard to beat. Crossing my fingers for a good draw step myself.
A Curious Obsession to find for Jędrek.
It's not ideal.
So
Trading for the crosses. The Vivian leaps. There's a Contempt draw, and he needs to draw something insane. By something insane, I mean something probably better than an island, which was his draw step in the end.
I do think that he has another opt in hand. So he might try to
opt into a protection spell. Notably, Pete, you know, even though Pete has a Vivian active, he cannot ever find a Wildgrowth Walker with it, because Wildgrowth Walker is just not present in the deck. So, you know, the sources of life are limited. Hydroid credit still gains you life, so it's not non-existent, and here it is. The crosses of the Hydroid variety.
Now with 6 counters, gaining 3 life, drawing 3 extra cards. Actually getting countered.
Well,
still the cards happen.
Yeah, the thing is that the body was not really all that necessary, because it wouldn't block anything that was on the battlefield as of right now. So Seal getting 3 life is essentially fogging the Mist-Cloud Herald, and Pete can start getting busy with those monsters kinda soon. Injury is at 15, so he still has some time before he dies, but
goes for
Pete can like effectively draw his deck pretty soon with Vivian Reeds and Rivian Beats, etc.
Jędrzej goes for direct damage to Pete, since he wants to get those card draw triggers.
I would not be surprised if Pete would actually activate Vivian Reed to destroy the Curious Obsession right now, but probably he will also play the Chupacabra first to target the Herald. That forces, that pops. Well, makes Yenjay sacrifice the Storm Tamer. There's also the Contempt in this hand, right? Still, the Contempt has not been cast, so there are just 2 removal spells. So I guess he just doesn't need to do that.
And that is enough.
Okay, Yenjay concedes, knowing that he cannot really come back from this situation. So Again, this mono blue deck is relying a lot on good starts, and this start was not the best start that there ever was.
It was not. All right, let's take a look at Piet's sideboard. What he can bring to the table. Cry of the Carnarium, Moment of Craving.
Yes,
Yes,
2
the-
copies of Moment of Craving and 2 duress, so not actually that much. He would probably enjoy having some Wild Growth Walkers in his deck, but duress is indeed the card to bring against the mono blue deck, disrupting their interactive spells and giving you, well, first and foremost giving you the knowledge of what you need to play around and what you need to prepare around, which is pretty huge. Playcrafter is probably too weak since 1-drops. You know, your opponent is going to sacrifice a 1-drop.
So we are going to know exactly what.
Moment of Craving is a removal spell that you can bring. Cry of the Carnarium is tricky because Llanowar Elves do not enjoy getting swept, but
They do not.
it is a card that Pete can choose to bring. Yeah, Yentri is bringing in some bigger counter spells. Melody and Essence Capture and the Disdainful Stroke for 3 copies of Spell Pierce. Seems like a reasonable way to tune his deck for the exact matchup.
Now he's also going to be on the play. So if he manages to exert enough pressure, it might be too much to overcome for the a bit slower Sultai deck.
Yeah, especially now NJ is going to be on the play, which is the preferable position for the mono blue aggro deck to be in, generally speaking. One thing that Fodder Erasure makes you do, if you run Fodder Erasure in your Sultai deck, you kinda want to run less duress, because overloading on too many discard spells does diminishing returns. So. On the other hand, duress is sizably better than Fodder Erasure against the mono blue deck, exactly, so. In this matchup, you probably are better off just having Wild Growth Walker in your deck over Fodder Erasure. Your mana is also better, so you end up shocking yourself less often, and your opponent is racing with you very often, so. Probably not the matchup you're thinking about when you are making those changes to your deck. It's more about trying to go over the top of the mirror match and also beat control.
All right, so the players are getting ready to draw their opening hands. Let's see how that goes. A 1 land hand for Jandrzej.
Swell deck definitely can keep one on this. Especially if they have Curious Obsession, which I think is the case for this hand. Although again, Jandrzej is extremely quick at shuffling this card, so it makes it harder to visually recognize all of the.
He does have an obsession, so he will get in with the Siren Stormtamer, draw a card.
Missing
Doesn't
land drop,
find
so
the land though.
Jandrzej really hopes to dodge a removal spell on his Stormtamer. Notably, the removal spell that Pete has in his hand is Assassin's Trophy, not the best when your opponent missed their second land drop, so at least there is that, but you also don't really want to let Jandrzej untap with the Siren Stormtamer.
So
So
it's
interesting to see what decision Pete will take, and indeed he just trophies the creature.
It was again one
So
of those.
yeah, Jandrzej has to be very happy that that's Assassin's Trophy and not cast down. And also he gets to end of turn opt with that mana. So it would be really hard for him to spend mana on opt otherwise, but this extra The fact that this land is untapped is actually really nice for him right now. Still no third land? I
No
guess
third
it's
land, but
second land.
there is a salamander drake.
Yeah, the Pteramander. Protected by dive down. No, not much to protect yet since it's just a 1-1, but now we can see Yenjay's hand in its entirety.
It's a bit expensive for 2 lands. Interesting
But
melody.
it's also
double
fairly
gin.
powerful for the mono blue deck. 2 Djinns and you dive in to protect those Djinns once you get to 4 lands. And Entrancing Melody, which is especially decent at stealing Hydroid Crosses. It costs 4 mana to steal the Crosses regardless of how big the body is. So it is a big flying trample creature, so it is good to remove from your opponent's battlefield, and it's good to acquire such a body for yourself. Pete nervously looking at a Hydroid Crosses in his hand, shuffling it with a Woodland Cemetery. Considering his moves and thinking about which card is the best option to take, he goes with a dive down, leaving Yenjay's hand to be the most expensive and most clunky he can. I like that move.
Would you consider discarding Chart a Course in that situation?
That's fires. You know, that backfires if your opponent just hits a land a lot, and if you take their dive, then they need both lands and a way to protect their creatures. So like,
Andre decided to fire an opt, trying to find the land. He did not. He picked up a Curious Obsession with no creature to stick it on.
it's looking slightly tough for Yenjay. Again, this mono blue deck needs a lot to line up well, and you know, not much is lining up well for Yenjay, so Pete might just have enough time to dismantle his interaction spells and then deploy his Hydroid Crosses.
Especially now that the Entrancing Melody has hit the graveyard thanks to a duress.
This game is going to take slightly longer, and the Crosses for potentially X4 next turn if Pete draws a land. Thanks to the Llanowar Elves, even though the Llanowar Elves, it's not been useful during all the turns, the extra mana is still good with your Hydroid Crosses. And he draws a Watery Grave, so he can play a 4/4. With Entrancing Melody out of sight, it's pretty safe for Pete to play. Yenjay though drawn a Curious Obsession, so he can play an Obsession on his Djinn next turn, and that makes the Crosses not big enough to block, which puts Yenjay in actually the driver's seat. You can also maybe make some land drops and improve his position. Like if Yenjay keeps drawing lands with this Obsessioned Djinn, then he actually will improve his position greatly.
Draws a second copy of Curious Obsession.
Yeah, chooses to keep up and Essence Capture.
So apart from Carnage Tyrant, he's covered.
Which Pete immediately drew, so it's kind of a bummer for Yenjay.
It is. It is a bummer.
Yenjay might consider casting the Essence Capture to put a counter on his Djinn, but it's not what he chooses to do. Now he goes to 11, and 11 is exactly enough to die to Carnage Tyrant and a Hydroid Crosses. But there's also 4 extra points of power on the battlefield, so Carnage Tyrant was a very good draw for Pete. Carnage Tyrant is a decently powerful card versus mono blue. It's like pretty bad in many spots since it doesn't block. But if the game, if like it is at if the game is at parity, it just ensures that your opponent is not going to do too much with you. Just
So
like stop you from doing
the
things.
attack brings it down to 9 points of life, since the Tempest Gen grows with each island.
Basic island.
Mm-hmm.
Henry drew a Merfolk Trickster. Merfolk Trickster is really good, but it might not be good enough. It needs to tap a Hydrate Crisis, and the thing is that it's really hard for Henry to deal the last 4 points of damages, and it's kind of hard to present lethal damage.
So he deploys the Merfolk Trickster in response to Thought Erasure. Trickster is a wizard that allows him to cast Wizard's Retort.
But that also makes Henry tap out of his mana, so Pete, even though the discard spell didn't resolve, he still knows that he can safely cast his cast down, and
This was an attack for 9, no, 10.
yep. Henry trades the Merfolk Trickster, and I think there is no real way for him to get back, so...
In a very quick fashion, the Sultai mid-range deck,
Well, not that quick, it took some time, but
25 minutes.
yeah.
It's
I
quite
consider
quick.
that to be some time, is that... I don't know.
All right.
It happens that you are very
Maybe your perception of time is different than mine.
Time is a construct. All right. Anyway, Piet Gareka takes down Jędrek Schmidt, so he improves to 2-0. He is on his way to be in a good spot for top 8. So with like 2 more wins,
Yeah,
he
the,
is.
yeah. The
He
Mono
should
Blue
be in.
deck definitely has a fail rate, and that has showed up here.
Yes. Those
It's rated to fail. That's not actually...
both the mono blue decks, mono red decks. Yes, they need to amass this.
Well,
this,
it's like very closely connected to the fact that you just run 2019 lands in this deck, and then if you draw just one, it's kind of tricky. If Jędrzej had drawn the second island off of the Curious Obsession trigger immediately, he would have a dive down ready to protect his Siren Storm Tamer, and he just wouldn't be able to lose, basically. And you know that's how the losses, that's how the games you lose against the mono blue deck always feel. That it feels like everything, as if everything has went great for them, but this time the game didn't went great for Jędrek. So
that's how it
he ended
goes.
up in the end he ended succumbing to the power of the mid-range deck packed with powerful cards and strong mythic monsters.
Exactly. All right. So thank you for joining us. We will be back with coverage of round 3 of 6. This is Mythic Championship qualifier for the Mythic Championship in London. So stay tuned, and we will see you very soon.